The air in the courtroom is thick and still, heavy with unspoken accusations and the sterile scent of disinfectant. It presses down on me, a physical weight. My palms are slick against the worn wood of the table. Across the aisle, his voice is a smooth, practiced cadence, calm, reasonable, painting a picture of financial hardship, of lean times, of my extravagant spending as the sole drain on his meager, struggling resources. Each word is a small, precise cut. He looks at the judge. Earnest, believable. He avoids my eyes. He's talking about my business now, the one I built from nothing, the one that kept us afloat through years of his ventures that never quite panned out. He's listing its modest income, exaggerating every expense, minimizing every success. He's talking about my savings account, the small buffer I managed to build for emergencies, portraying it as a hidden hoard. His lawyer nods, a shark in expensive suit, feeding off the lies. My lawyer shifts beside me, a nervous rustle of papers. She gives me a quick, tight look that says, "Stay calm." Calm feels like a distant planet. My blood is a roaring river in my ears. He's not just lying. He's erasing my reality, twisting it into something ugly and false, presenting me as the problem, the spendthrift, the one who mismanaged everything, while he, poor, struggling him, did his best just to keep his head above water. The worst part is the ease with which the lies flow. No hesitation, no flicker of guilt in his eyes when I finally meet them. Just a blank, confident performance. He believes his own fiction, or he's convinced himself it's necessary. And in this moment, it feels like the judge believes it too. It feels like I am drowning in his manufactured truth. If this story hits close to home, I'd love to hear your version in the comments below. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know to keep sharing these stories. It wasn't always like this, of course. There was a time when his voice wasn't a weapon. There was a time when finances were just shared. Or at least I thought they were. Life felt solid, if not spectacular. We had the house, the cars, the steady hum of routine. I poured myself into building my small consulting business. Long hours, late nights, bootstrapping every step of the way. It was my independence, my contribution, my passion project that grew into something real. He had his job, seemingly stable, and dabbled in various investment ideas, always chasing the next big thing. I handled the household bills, the groceries, the kids' expenses. He managed the bigger picture, the investments, the savings, the things I frankly didn't have the time or the inclination to deep dive into. I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, my partner. The first crack appeared subtly. A check bounced. Something that had never happened before. He brushed it off, a bank error, quickly corrected. Then came the vague answers about money, the impatience when I asked about our joint savings balance. It wasn't malicious at first, just evasive. I told myself he was stressed with work or maybe worried about one of his investment schemes. I was busy, so busy trying to grow my business, juggling school runs and PDA meetings. I didn't push. That was my first mistake, I see now. The passive acceptance of his opaque answers. Then came the day the papers were served. A cold, sterile envelope handed to me on my doorstep. Divorce. The word itself felt alien, like it belonged to someone else's life. But the real shock wasn't the end of the marriage. It was the financial picture he presented in the initial filing. A picture of near destitution on his part, paired with inflated claims about my income and assets. It was a lie, a blatant, cruel lie. He was claiming he barely made ends meet, that my business was thriving beyond belief, and that I should be paying him spousal support. The audacity took my breath away. The early days of the divorce were a blur of panic and confusion. Finding a lawyer, explaining the situation, trying to gather financial documents that suddenly seemed to be missing or incomplete. Every conversation felt like climbing a sheer cliff face. His lawyer was aggressive, demanding reams of documents, questioning every single expense I had ever made. Grocery bills, school supplies, doctor's appointments. Everything was scrutinized, twisted into evidence of excessive spending. Meanwhile, his financial disclosures were vague, incomplete. Red flags everywhere, but proving anything felt impossible. I spent hours poring over old bank statements, trying to piece together a puzzle where half the pieces were missing. My business records were meticulous, thank goodness, but they only showed my side of the equation.
His side was a black box.
He stonewalled every request for information. My lawyer filed motions, sent demands, but his responses were always delayed, partial, or filled with excuses. It felt like a deliberate strategy to wear me down, to bleed me dry with legal fees, to make the fight so exhausting I would just give up and agree to his terms, no matter how unfair. The stress was a constant companion. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. My focus at work suffered. Every time the phone rang, my heart leaped, expecting more demands, more accusations. I felt humiliated, exposed, and utterly alone. Friends offered support, but they couldn't truly understand the specific, grinding agony of watching someone you trusted weaponize every piece of shared history and twist it into a lie. They couldn't understand the fear that he might actually succeed, that I could lose everything I had worked for, everything I had built for my children's future. The crisis deepened with each passing month. His narrative was gaining traction, at least in the initial legal filings. He presented himself as the wronged party, the stable provider whose wife had somehow mismanaged everything or was hiding assets. Because I couldn't immediately prove he was hiding money, the burden of proof felt overwhelmingly on me to justify every penny I had. My small savings were dwindling, eaten up by legal fees. His strategy was working. He was using the system, slow and deliberate, as another tool of control, another way to break me. There were days I sat in my lawyer's office, listening to the legal jargon, the complicated procedures, and felt utterly lost. She was doing her best, a fierce advocate, but even she seemed frustrated by his elusiveness. "He's good at this," she admitted one day, her voice low. "He knows how to obscure things obscure." Such a mild word for deliberate deception, for financial abuse disguised as legal strategy. I started to doubt myself. Was I crazy? Had I somehow misread our entire financial history? Was I the one who had been irresponsible? The gaslighting was insidious, creeping into my own thoughts. He was so convincing, so calm in his lies, that a part of me, a weak, tired part, wanted to believe him, just to make the fight stop. The financial pressure was immense. I had to keep my business afloat, manage the household, protect my children from the worst of the tension, and fund this increasingly expensive legal battle against a ghost. One particularly bad day, after receiving yet another evasive financial disclosure from his side, I sat in my car outside the courthouse and just
cried.
Not loud, dramatic sobs, but a quiet, hopeless welling up that left me hollow. I felt like I was fighting a phantom, a version of him I never knew existed, a version who was cold, calculating, and utterly ruthless. I called my best friend, barely able to speak. She listened patiently, then said something simple that cut through the despair. "You know the truth," she said. "Don't let him take that from you too." The truth. Yes, I knew the truth. He wasn't broke. He wasn't a victim of my spending. He was manipulating the system, hiding assets, and lying. The question was, how to prove it? My lawyer had hit a wall with standard discovery methods. Bank records only went so far. Shell companies were a possibility, but hard to trace, without a clear lead. It was like searching for a needle in a haystack, and the haystack was on fire. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of paper, bank statements, credit card bills, old tax returns, crumpled legal documents. The sheer volume was overwhelming. Where did I even begin to look? What was I looking for? I wasn't a financial expert. I was good at my business, yes, but understanding complex financial maneuvers, hidden accounts, tracing money trails, it was beyond me. I felt that familiar wave of hopelessness wash over me. Then I remembered something my lawyer had mentioned offhandedly weeks ago. Forensic accounting. Specialists who could dig deeper, follow trails invisible to the untrained eye. It sounded expensive. More expense I couldn't really afford. But the alternative was losing everything. Giving up felt like a betrayal of myself, of the years I'd worked, of the future I wanted for my kids. My friend's words echoed. Don't let him take the truth from you. This was the turning point. The decision solidified in the quiet pre-dawn light. I wasn't going to fight his lies with my intuition or my limited financial knowledge. I needed an expert, a hunter who knew how to track this specific kind of prey. I called my lawyer first thing. I asked about forensic accountants. She recommended one, a woman known for being tenacious, meticulous, and discreet. Her name was Sarah. Meeting Sarah felt different. She wasn't a lawyer focused on legal strategy. She was a detective focused on numbers. She listened patiently as I laid out the tangled mess of our finances, the missing statements, the vague answers, my gut feeling that something was very, very wrong. She asked sharp, precise questions. She didn't offer false hope, but she offered a quiet determination that was exactly what I needed. It's like any puzzle, she said, her voice calm and steady. The pieces are there. Sometimes they're just hidden very well. Especially now with digital assets. Digital assets. Cryptocurrency. I hadn't even thought about that. He had mentioned it a few times over the years, something he was looking into, something about the future of money. I dismissed it as another one of his fleeting interests. But Sarah's eyes held a knowing glint. It's a common place to try and hide things, she explained. People think it's completely anonymous, untraceable. It's not impossible to follow, but it requires a different kind of digging. The process with Sarah was painstaking. She needed everything I had, every bank statement, every tax return, every investment document, every email or text message I could find that even remotely touched on finances. She went back years, tracing the flow of money in and out of accounts, looking for anomalies, for missing links, for patterns that didn't match the story he was telling. Weeks turned into months. The legal battleground on, punctuated by frustrating depositions where he continued to lie under oath, calm and assured. My lawyer advised caution. Don't tip your hand, she said. Let him keep talking. Let him dig his own hole. It was agonizing. Sitting there, listening to him perjure himself, knowing he was lying, and having to remain silent, to appear defeated even, was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Every fiber of my being screamed to expose him, to call him out right there. But Sarah needed time. The trap wasn't ready yet. The deepening crisis was the waiting. The uncertainty. Sarah would call with updates, sometimes promising, sometimes frustrating. Found a small transfer here. Doesn't seem connected to anything obvious. This account closed abruptly, trying to see where the funds went. He's using shell companies, layering transactions, making it complicated. It felt like a slow, relentless tide of complex data, and I was clinging to a tiny raft, praying she would find solid ground. Meanwhile, his lawyer was pushing for a quick settlement based on his false financial picture. The pressure intensified. My own legal costs were astronomical now. Doubt gnawed at me. What if Sarah didn't find anything substantial? What if all this time, all this money, was for nothing? What if he actually did get away with it? The thought made me physically ill. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about justice, about not letting him rewrite history, about protecting my own integrity and my children's future from his deceit. I remembered the look in his eyes in the courtroom, the cold absence of warmth or recognition. He wasn't just divorcing me. He was trying to annihilate my financial standing, to leave me vulnerable and dependent. The betrayal felt absolute, and the anger solidified into a cold, hard resolve. I wouldn't just survive this. I would fight back. I wouldn't just seek a fair outcome. I would expose him. Then came the call from Sarah. It was late on a Tuesday. Her voice was quieter than usual, but there was a tremor of excitement underneath. I think I've found it, she said. It's complex, layered through several different accounts and exchanges, but the pattern is clear. And it connects to something significant. My heart leaped into my throat. Crypto? I whispered. Crypto, she confirmed. And a lot more of it than he's claimed to have. It's been moved around, trying to obscure the origin, but the trail didn't go cold. I've got dates, amounts, and connections to wallets he controls. It directly contradicts his sworn statements. A wave of pure, cold elation washed over me. Not relief yet, just the sharp, clean edge of knowing. Knowing he was caught. Knowing the truth was finally visible. We worked quickly with my lawyer, integrating Sarah's findings into our case, preparing the questions, strategizing the timing. We decided not to file Sarah's full report immediately. We would wait. Wait for him to take the stand again. Wait for him to repeat his lies under oath, confident that his secrets were safe. The morning of the hearing arrived. The same courtroom, the same sterile smell, the same heavy air. He took the stand first, his lawyer leading him through his testimony. He repeated the narrative, struggling finances, my alleged overspending, the minimal value of his assets. He listed his bank accounts, his few disclosed investments, the same vague, incomplete picture he'd been presenting for months. He was smooth, confident, looking directly at the judge, earnest and believable to anyone who didn't know the truth. He even added details, small, plausible-sounding justifications for why certain funds were unavailable or accounts were closed. He sounded so convincing, so calm. A perfect liar. My lawyer's turn came for cross-examination. She started slow, asking about his income, his expenses, the things he had already testified about. He answered easily, repeating his carefully constructed fiction. Then she shifted, subtly. She asked about hobbies, interests. He seemed slightly confused, but answered. She asked about technology, about online activities. Still nothing alarming to him. Then, she introduced Sarah. Sarah took the stand, calm and professional. My lawyer asked about her background, her expertise in forensic accounting, particularly with digital assets. He shifted in his seat, a flicker of something annoyance crossing his face, but still no real concern. He must have thought Sarah was just going to talk about my business, perhaps try to claim I was undervaluing it. Sarah began her testimony. She spoke clearly, methodically. She presented flow charts, transaction logs, evidence gathered from public blockchains, and financial records she had meticulously pieced together. She wasn't speaking in abstract terms. She was showing a trail. Mr. Smith, Sarah's voice was steady, addressing the judge but keeping the evidence focused on him, testified that his liquid assets were minimal, primarily contained in a few stated bank accounts and a modest retirement fund. The judge nodded, reviewing the file. My analysis shows a significantly different picture, Sarah continued. Starting approximately 3 years ago, concurrent with certain marital difficulties, large sums of money began moving out of his disclosed accounts. She pointed to a chart showing transfers. These funds did not flow into standard investment vehicles he disclosed. Instead, they were transferred to a series of accounts associated with various cryptocurrency exchanges. His body stiffened. His eyes darted towards his lawyer, then back to Sarah. The confidence was gone, replaced by a rigid stillness. Sarah continued, laying out the trail. These funds were used to acquire significant quantities of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other cryptocurrencies. Transactions were layered, moving assets between different exchanges and private wallets. In an apparent attempt to obscure ownership, she presented evidence linking specific wallet addresses and exchange accounts to him, not through direct registration, but through the timing of transfers, the amounts, the IP addresses used for access, digital breadcrumbs he thought were invisible. It was complex, detailed, irrefutable. Furthermore, Sarah's voice remained level, but the impact of her words was immense. My analysis confirms that the total value of these undisclosed cryptocurrency holdings, based on market prices at the time of the initial filing and current valuation, is substantial. Many times the value of the assets he disclosed under oath. She then addressed the crucial point, the perjury. Mr. Smith testified today, and in prior depositions, that his assets were X, she stated, citing the specific, low number he had provided. Based on the evidence I have compiled, his actual assets, including these previously undisclosed digital holdings, are Y. The number she stated was staggeringly higher. He has consistently failed to disclose these assets, despite direct questions about all financial holdings, including digital currencies. The air was no longer just heavy, it was electric. You could feel the shock ripple through the courtroom. His face went pale. Not just pale, but a sickly, ashen gray. His eyes, previously so confident, were wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. He looked utterly blindsided. He had clearly believed his crypto was untouchable, untraceable. He had planned for her to look at bank accounts, at property, at traditional investments. He hadn't planned for Sarah. He hadn't planned for someone who knew how to follow the digital ghosts. His lawyer was on his feet immediately, sputtering objections, trying to discredit Sarah's findings. But Sarah was prepared. She calmly presented the backup documentation, the transaction IDs, the expert analysis. It wasn't just speculation, it was evidence. And it directly, unequivocally contradicted his sworn testimony. The judge, a stern, no-nonsense woman, listened intently. Her expression was unreadable at first, then it hardened. She looked at him, still slumped in the witness stand, his face a mask of stunned horror. She picked up a pen, made a note. The weight of that small action felt enormous. It wasn't just a note about finances, it was a note about credibility, about perjury. My lawyer asked the final question, simple and devastating. Mr. Smith, do you stand by your sworn testimony that your assets are limited to the accounts and investments you listed earlier today? He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked from his lawyer, who was frantically whispering something, to the judge, to me. His eyes lingered on me for a moment, not with defiance or anger, but with a look I couldn't quite decipher. Was it regret? Recognition? Defeat? Then he looked away, down at his hands, trembling slightly on the railing. The silence stretched, heavy and unbearable. The judge finally spoke, her voice cutting through the tension. Mr. Smith, I remind you that you are under oath. This is not a question to take lightly. He swallowed hard. He glanced at Sarah, at the charts of his hidden wealth displayed for the court to see. The lie was exposed. The carefully constructed facade had crumbled around him in minutes. I need to consult with my attorney. He finally choked out, his voice barely above a whisper, a stark contrast to his earlier confident performance. The judge granted a brief recess. As he was escorted out, his face was still ghostly pale. He refused to look at me. He had come into court expecting to finalize the destruction of my financial life, secure in the knowledge that his hidden assets were safe. He left exposed, humiliated, facing potential legal consequences far beyond a simple divorce settlement. The hunter had become the hunted. The aftermath was a strange mix of relief and anticlimax. The immediate tension broke, but the long process of untangling the mess he had created was just beginning. With Sarah's evidence, the dynamic of the divorce shifted entirely. His lies had not only cost him his credibility with the court, but had given me immense leverage. The settlement negotiations were now on my terms. There was no more arguing about my income or my expenses. The focus was squarely on his hidden wealth and the consequences of his deception. He settled quickly after that. The prospect of further investigation, of facing perjury charges, was too great. The terms were significantly more favorable than anything I could have hoped for based on his initial fraudulent disclosures. It wasn't just a fair split of the assets. It was compensation for the years of financial manipulation and the immense cost, both emotional and financial, of exposing his lies. But the victory wasn't just about the money. It was about vindication. It was about reclaiming my truth. It was about proving to myself and to the world that I wasn't the weak, irresponsible person he had tried to portray. I had stood firm. I had fought back. And with the help of someone who knew how to navigate the hidden complexities, I had won. Walking out of the courthouse for the final time, the air felt lighter. The heavy weight I had carried for so long had lifted, not completely, but enough to breathe deeply again. The betrayal still stung, a permanent scar, but the cold, hard satisfaction of seeing his face when he realized he was caught was a powerful balm. He thought he was smarter, more cunning. He thought he could use the system to crush me. But he underestimated my resolve, and he fundamentally misunderstood the nature of trust and the consequences of shattering it so completely. He built his castle of lies on sand, and when the tide of truth came in, it washed it all away, leaving him exposed and alone on the shore. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to fight for your truth, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these stories to life.